Yeah, I think we'll get going here. We've got hundreds of people joining us this evening from all over the place. So I'd just like to extend a really warm welcome to all of you joining us today. My name is Duncan Whittick, and on behalf of Canada's nonprofit Outdoor Learning Store and all of our outdoor learning partners, I just wanted to extend our welcome to you for our first session in the Canadian Outdoor Learning Spring Virtual Workshop Series.
Hi everyone, I'm Farheen, and I want to welcome you all on behalf of Take Me Outside, who's one of the 20 partners co-hosting this outdoor learning workshop series. So welcome.
Awesome. And we know for many of you across the country and beyond, this is a pretty challenging time. And we just wanted to acknowledge that, and that we know that outdoor learning and environmental learning is so critically important right now. And so it's great to see so much interest and engagement right now. So while we've got some people still rolling in here, we wanted to do a couple polls for you to see where people are coming from. So the first one is just, where are you joining us from? And we've got provinces and territories, US, we know some registrants from the US, and or elsewhere on this beautiful planet. I'll give you a few more seconds here. Okay. So sharing the results, looks like British Columbia has the most people here tonight, and it's still bright in British Columbia, where I know our presenter is tonight, and but lots of people from Ontario and good representation from every region. So really great to see that. One other poll we wanted to share with you is, what type of educator are you? And there's a variety of answers here, from classroom teachers to community educators, students. Maybe you're not an educator. Maybe you just like to, you support educators, or maybe you just love the ideas that you've heard about that are going to be talked about tonight. So we'll give you a few more seconds. Looks like primary teachers might win the day here. Okay, we'll share them with you. It looks like, yep, K to 3, lots of K to 3s for you, Jillian, tonight. So, and then lots of early years educators, intermediate, but nice to see educators from all groups in that. Okay. So again, for those of you who just joined us, again, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Canada's Outdoor Learning Store and our 20 outdoor learning partners from across Canada to our presentation this evening. Again, we have hundreds of people on the line. I know Zoom literacy is pretty high, at an all-time high right now, but if you're used to other platforms like Teams or other things, you can find a chat box at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you can, as people have been doing, you can enter questions in the chat. You can say hello from where you're joining us from. We will have breakout rooms tonight. We know that people are craving time to connect together. And so we are going to have really small groups of 4 and 5 breakout rooms where you can chat about some of the ideas discussed tonight. You are on mute. I would encourage you to continue to stay on mute, please, throughout the presentation, but you will be able to go off of mute during the breakout rooms. But encourage you to put on your video. You can scroll through, see the real live people in your presence tonight. So the way tonight's going to roll is we're going to introduce our partners and our presenter. Our presenter is going to give a short presentation. She'll pose a question for you. You'll have some time in breakout groups, and then you'll come back and we've got some time for Q&A. And at the very end, we've got prizes. And then we're going to stick around after. If some of you want to discuss your burning questions in a smaller group setting, we're going to stick around after too. So we hope you have a really good time with us this evening. Oh, and tomorrow, or maybe even yet tonight, I'll send out a link to the recording and a link for a certificate if you need one. So you can receive a certificate tonight. So I think I'll pass the mic back over to Farheen, but I think we've got enough people. So Farheen is joining us from Toronto. I'm here in the homelands of the Ktunaxa and the Shuswap, and just wanted to give everyone a chance tonight just to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous territories that you're joining us from tonight, and just to recognize that connection to the land and this place and the Indigenous knowledge and understanding that is here and has been here is so important for our work to connect people to this place. And so, yeah, Farheen, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Duncan. So like Duncan mentioned, my name is Farheen. I'm here in Toronto, which is the Indigenous land of many. Is that my mic?
No, we're good now.
All good, all good. Yeah, I'm here from Toronto, and this is the Indigenous land of many nations, including Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. And like Duncan mentioned, it's great to acknowledge the land you're in. So yeah, we encourage you to do that in the chat. The Outdoor Learning Spring Virtual Workshop series is brought to you by a group of 20 different partners from all across the country, and all of us offer excellent outdoor and environmental educational resources, programs, and support. So Duncan and I are going to just walk you quickly through each of them, and Alyssa from the Take Me Outside team is going to pop the links in the chat so all of you can take a moment and learn about all of these great organizations.
Thanks, Farheen. And I'm just going to share my screen here.
Great.
There you go.
All right, we're going to start with Take Me Outside. So Take Me Outside raises awareness and facilitates action on nature connection and outdoor learning in schools across Canada. We have initiatives such as Take Me Outside Day and Take Me Outside Learning Challenge that happens throughout the school year. And we offer our weatherproof journals on the Outdoor Learning store.
And we also got the Pacific Foundation for the Understanding of Nature, and they are a great supporter of a lot of our partners. And many of you may be excited to know that they are offering up a $1,000 gift card to the Outdoor Learning Store for the 2021-22 Take Me Outside for Learning School Year Challenge. So another incentive to sign up for the coming school year.
ECOM is Canada's national, bilingual, and charitable umbrella network for environmental learning. They host national conferences and awards, and actually the ECOM 2021 conference is happening this week and it's starting tomorrow.
And many of you are aware of Green Teacher, and I believe Ian and Sophia from Green Teacher are on the line, and they help to promote environmental awareness among young people, and they have an amazing series of webinars and podcasts and magazines, and they just launched Earthy Chats with the Outdoor Learning Store, and we offer several of their resources on our store as well.
All right, next is Green Learning, which offers free online educational programs about energy, climate change, and green economy that engage and empower students to create positive change for our evolving world.
And Natural Curiosity, who are going to be presenting, Rosa and Haley will be presenting at our one of our upcoming spring workshops. They offer an amazing resource, and it is available in English and French on the Outdoor Learning Store as well.
Water Rangers supports the collection of data on their free open data platform, and they have the goal of providing communities with the tools they need to take care of our lakes, rivers, and oceans. Their water testing kits are available at the Outdoor Learning Store, and they actually have a webinar coming up in a couple of weeks too.
CBean, which is near and dear to my heart. I'm also their executive director. And so we host the Outdoor Learning Store and a variety of resources and professional development opportunities and our Wild Voices youth programs.
BC's Environmental Educators Provincial Specialist Association provides networking, curriculum support, and leadership for teachers. They piloted Canada's nonprofit Outdoor Learning Store in BC in partnership with CBean.
And WildSight is another amazing environmental partner who really tries to connect kids to place and give them the tools to face some of the big challenges we're facing right now.
The Global Environmental and Outdoor Education Council is your resource for teaching in the area of global environmental and outdoor education. They offer conferences, workshops, teaching ideas, and lots of other cool information.
And Sask Outdoors, who I think Leah and Rachel are on the line, they encourage educators and people who participate in outdoor recreation to practice and teach environmental responsibility. And they have tons of great workshops and resources on their website too.
The Alberta Council for Environmental Education works collaboratively to advance environmental education in Alberta so that today's students have the knowledge and skills to build a sustainable future.
Awesome, thanks. And Snowcanon Science is a super engaging, interactive organization led by Jade Harvey Barrel, who I think a number of you know, and they connect young people to the world around them through the lens of science.
Get Outside and Play offers resources, workshops, and consulting services to support nature connection and outdoor experiences for young children.
And OC is for all educators interested in integrating environmental topics into their teaching practice. They've got their big EcoLinks conference coming up, so encourage you to check that out. That's coming up in a few weeks on May 7th and 8th.
C2C, or Classrooms to Communities, is a Made in BC collaborative of partners committed to providing place-based educational leadership and support through a suite of strategies and events and activities. And
KBE is Canada's first partnership of school superintendents, and they've actually come together to support outdoor learning, and they have an inspiration handbook, videos, and they're part of Take Me Outside's annual challenge.
And last but not least, we have Learning for a Sustainable Future. LSF works to integrate the concepts and principles of sustainable development into education policy, school curricula, teacher education, and lifelong learning across Canada. They offer a wide variety of resources and workshops.
Awesome. How'd we do? We said we'd try and do that all in 10 to 12 seconds each, but there's a lot of partners. So thanks everyone. And obviously, yeah, just a huge wealth of resources and information available, much of it for free from these incredible organizations. So highly encourage you to check them out. All of their logos and links are on our website, on our workshops page, and on our About Us page. So please go check them out, and we'll look forward to seeing you at one of their events soon. So without further ado, our last partner is Imagine Ed, and we are very fortunate tonight to have Gillian Judson of Imagine Ed, who is the catalyst, the creator, the director, the expander of this program, the links there. She is an assistant professor in educational leadership at Simon Fraser University. Her research and teaching are primarily concerned with the role of imagination in all learning, with a particular focus on imaginative, place-based teaching practices. She's the author of 2 incredible books. And I know that because I have teachers from all over the country who are accessing these and just saying how much they're appreciating them. And even I myself go on walks, even just as an adult, and enjoy the amazing practices she lays out there. So really want to give a warm, warm welcome to Gillian Judson.
Hi there, everybody. This is an incredible honor for me. I'm just sharing my screen. I maybe get a thumbs up, Duncan, if you can see that clearly. Maybe feel a little bit less nervous if I don't look at how many people are in the room today, but I want to welcome all of my fellow Canadians. This is great. And I've noticed some friends and family are in the room today. So thank you so much for being here. To have so many people take time to learn more about imaginative and ecological practices, it's very, very exciting to think that we're seeing a real transition in education. I'm joining you today from the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo First Nations people, otherwise known as Surrey. I live in North Surrey, and a lot of the images you'll see today come from the land here. One thing I can say for sure is in my own research and practice, if we implement these ideas ourselves, as educators, we sure come to see the wonder in the land around us. We come to see the beauty in the things that we might ordinarily take for granted. So today, in my short time with you, I really want to draw attention to imagination. It's something that tends to be left out of some of the pedagogies I've noticed in outdoor learning. And it's something that we need to crucially include, in my opinion. So now I'm just going to figure out how to do the slide. There we go. I really want to start by explaining where my own journey into this research began. And I just have to share a story of a pivotal moment that I like to call disaffected. And I like, now that I live in Zoom land, I put it in italics because it's sort of like disaffected. It's kind of like that booming movie voice. Thank you for laughing, Duncan. I appreciate that because I can only see Duncan. So anyway, prior to working in post-secondary, I was a high school teacher. I am not a biologist. I am not a scientist. I am a French and social studies teacher. I'm a teacher with a deep concern and care, an interest in the natural world. And I had some experiences, one in particular when I was teaching, that concerned me. And so you have to picture this. I'm teaching in an inner city school in Langley. It's the kind of school that a lot of people say is a rough school, but I taught in it and I didn't see it as a rough school. The students amazed me every day with their kindness and their compassion and their intelligence and their creativity. They were good human beings. So good, in fact, that one person in particular used to thank me for my French lessons at the end of each class. So on this particular day, I just finished a riveting lesson on the passé composé in French 11 or French 12. And one of my students, his name was Ryan, he was on his way out of the classroom. He was slow to grab his things, so he was one of the last people to leave. Now, the only thing standing in Ryan's way before he had freedom ahead of him were two really big blue recycling bins, a small dented black garbage can, and me. So as he's leaving the classroom, he's flipping his plastic water bottle in his hand. He passes me and he says, "You know what, Madame J, I really appreciated your lesson today." And I said, "Oh, thank you, Ryan. That's really kind of you." And he said, "Have a good day." And he threw his plastic water bottle into the garbage can. Now, I was very used to fishing things out of the garbage can and sorting them into the recycling bins. But on this particular day, I said, whoa, Ryan. And he was a good student, full ride to university scholarships, could tell you everything about climate change, honor roll this, honor roll that. I said, "Why would you throw your plastic water bottle into the garbage? We're trying to recycle." And he said, "With all due respect, Miss J, what's it got to do with me? What has it got to do with me?" And I was stunned. So in learning and talking to him and others, I realized there was a huge lack of emotional connection to any place, to any local natural place. And this, for me, was a driving force in moving my research into my doctoral research. So the question that led my research was at the time, what is required to educate for ecological understanding? So a sense of care and concern for the natural world, but also the emotional connection that is required to actually live differently, to actually make decisions that are going to support our relationship with the natural world. And over my years of doctoral study and of lots of tuition and some wrinkles later, I've come to the conclusion for now, and I'm a good 12 years out of my PhD, is that there's some components that we need in our outdoor educational practices. And these are the components or the principles of what I call imaginative ecological education. And those pieces are feeling, activeness, and place. So I want to speak to those briefly today with you. The sort of the capture sentence that captures the main idea would be this, that the moments that most shape our ecological understanding, those moments engage our emotions, imagination, and the body in context. Now, this is where my work tends to stand alone, because imagination is so neglected in education. For the primary teachers out there, you might think not. but it tends to be neglected increasingly once children begin to grow into years, middle, high school, post-secondary. And for many people, if I come to do some work in a school, when I start to talk about imagination, people are like, I thought we were going to do some serious work today. There's so many misconceptions around imagination. My husband teaches in a high school here in Surrey. And whenever he knows I'm going to speak with a high school staff, he says, don't talk about imagination. And how can I not talk about imagination? Without imagination, nothing's happening. So this is why I really need to talk a little bit about what we mean by it. There's so much misunderstanding. I'm not saying that imagination doesn't involve the fantasy life of the child and of the adult, but that is not only what imagination does for human beings. So I take a much more Vygotskian view of imagination. Imagination is at the heart of all we learn throughout all of our lives. Unfortunately, we tend to relegate it to the arts classrooms and to young children, and we tend to dismiss it as frivolous or trivial. But from Vygotsky's perspective, and for many, many scholars around the world, and for many, many educators that are doing this work, we know that, in fact, imagination is at the heart of all cultural life, not just the arts, but mathematics, science. It's at the heart of literacy. It's at the heart of all of the things we so value in school. So how then can we ignore it in a lot of our pedagogical practices? This is the question. Why is imagination so important for everyone? Why is it so important for all educators? Now, if you take one thing away today from this brief talk, I hope it's this. Consider that human beings never just think. We actually are doing our students a disservice if we design lessons for thinkers, because human beings always perceive and they feel and they think at the same time. And this was a term coined by David Kresh. He said we are per-thinkers. Now, anybody on Twitter knows that I am at per-thinker. And I know I tweet far too much. It's become a bit of a problem. Here I am telling my 13-year-old, get off social media. And then there I am like tweet, tweet, tweet. Anywho, but what happens in our practice if we notice our students as per-thinkers? It means we need to slow down and identify how is this opportunity for their learning engaging their emotion. And I certainly didn't design my French lessons on the passé composé in that way. If I think back to the lessons that were really great, I actually did engage their feeling much more often. So this is why I want to talk about per-thinking. Feeling is something that we tend to associate in our culture with sort of a negative vibe. Oh, they have too many emotions. We have to leave our feelings out of it. But a lot of scholarship indicates that without an emotional connection, there is no learning. And in terms of ecological education, there's no action. There's no action until we feel something. So engaging feeling is at the heart of some of the work I'm doing, and I know it's at the heart of the work you're doing. But when I'm talking about an imaginative practice, I'm talking about including and evoking feeling. The other feature of some of the work I'm doing is the idea of activeness. Now, this is a term from a deep ecologist. He says, Arne Naess is his name. He said there's two ways we relate to the world. We can be active in nature. We need to keep those parks. We love them for our biking and our camping and our hiking. But we also have a relationship he defines as activeness, which is more often achieved through pause. It's often achieved through that mindful meditation. If anybody has ever had the experience, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, where you're lying on the ground, on the grass, on a beach, maybe it's evening, and you're looking up at the sky, and you're so calm and so still in that moment, you can't really determine where your skin ends and where that grass begins or where that soil begins, because you feel somewhat immersed in it. It's that realization at the level of the body, how we are connected to the natural world around us. That's the piece we want to develop as well. And the third piece of an imaginative and ecological approach is being open to, receptive, and aware of what place affords us. Now, I am a white settler scholar, trained and in Western pedagogies, somebody who was a student of Western pedagogies, and am now on a journey of understanding Indigenous perspectives. But this connection to place and the deep and profound ways in which place teaches us is at the heart of Indigenous pedagogies and has been time immemorial. So we have so much we can learn from Indigenous perspectives. There is a very small piece of Western pedagogy that is very rich and talks about place-based pedagogies. And this is what I have studied. It's part of my work now to bridge these perspectives. But what matters is that we can, if we're open enough to place, we're affectively alert, we're emotionally aware of what the natural environment offers us. We have a colleague, and I'm writing something right now for Green Teacher, I hope they accept it, it's about how collaboration, when it comes to imaginative ecological education, that can look like you and I outdoors in a forest seeking emotional connections. We're collaborating with sort of a silent co-teacher. And so this is where the direction I would like to take this work. So this is a quote that's really inspired the particular pedagogy I'm going to talk about now, which is the walking curriculum. It's by Gary Snyder. He says, we learn a place and how to visualize spatial relationships as children on foot and with imagination. Place and the scale of place must be measured against our bodies and their capabilities. That is a profound statement for me because it talks centrally, literally centrally, about imagination, and we cannot deny it. What I want to do in the work I'm doing is to extend that beyond the young children. So I'm so pleased to see we have middle school educators, high school educators, post-secondary educators, in the community educators, guardians, parents here today, because this is not work only for young educators of young children. So the work that has been quite popular right now with the pandemic and a real interest in getting outside for germ reasons is the walking curriculum. So what is the walking curriculum? The short answer to that is that it's a set of 60 imagination and inquiry focused walks, and it brings together the three themes I just talked about: engaging body, emotion, and imagination in place and in interdisciplinary ways, that those outdoor learning activities in fact inform the curricular outcomes, competencies that we're developing in the classroom. The long answer to what is the walking curriculum about is that imagination matters. We can't leave that out of the equation when it comes to wanting to educate for an emotional desire and will to live differently in the world. Secondly, there is no learning without emotional connection. And some of you might say, oh, I learned things in university that, well, do you take courses in university and you remember absolutely nothing of them now? Because I certainly do. And so there is a strong argument and research for the need for emotion in learning. These three pieces come together in not just a set of walks. I think for some educators that are doing the walks, and I've talked to many, and many are here today, is very exciting, is that at first it might be a set of walks, but the purpose is for it to become a methodology. It's to become, you don't need the book after a while because you begin to see how you can frame an inquiry question, how you can pair it with a tool of imagination. I haven't been able to go into that now, but these cognitive tools that engage imagination, and how you can then create the walks, or better yet, the students, they're fantastic at coming up with walking themes. I would love to take questions from any of the 390 people in the room.
And you can type those into the chat, and Alyssa is monitoring the chat. I appreciate the people in the chat asking about capacity and that. We do have capacity for 1,000 tonight, so there's just some little Zoom glitch, but this is even better.
So I could start with a question I see right away. AW has asked, does the walking curriculum book have all of the 60 walk themes? Yes, it absolutely does. The walking curriculum started by, I did a thesis around the question and I was excited to get it published, but absolutely nobody wants to read the book. I think my mom's the only one that bought it. So it was very useless in terms of the work I want to do, which was getting the ideas into the hands of educators like yourselves. So I wrote a second book that came out through UBC Press, and that was based on my work in the Outdoor Environmental School Project. How do we teach kids to read outside using these principles? But still, it wasn't enough to get more educators outdoors daily. So this one came about when I thought, well, how's 5 ways to take learning, math, social science outdoors in ways that engage all these principles. So then I did another blog post where it was 5 and then 10 and then 20, and there was eventually 60 that are now in this resource. The first 30 are very brief and you can use them very quickly. The middle 15 have a bunch more detail around them and can also be readily used. And the last 15 are also quickly able to use, but are more geared towards secondary school.
Great. So what we're going to do now is just, I guess, move forward with the questions, since it seems like all of you have great questions. So Jillian, the next question we have is, okay, the next question is from Silvana Argento, is how do we apply these concepts to virtual teaching?
Thank you for that question. I've been really encouraged by what I'm hearing from Ontario, and we did a webinar with the Peel School District, and Michelle McKay was facilitating that. I don't know if she's in the room tonight, but the educators in that group were, there's obviously some issues with supervision if the children you're teaching are home, but if those children have supervision at home and those children can go outdoors with a parent or guardian, they're absolutely incorporating walks as part of this children's learning. And then things they learn in those walks are applied when they come back inside in ways that engage imagination through story and imagery and rhythms and patterns. So they are definitely being used. Like any useful pedagogy, I think it doesn't solve all of the complex educational problems we face. It won't resolve the problem of the child who's neglected when they're at home. It does not solve the problem of the parent who refuses to accept that outdoor learning is a legitimate way to learn. However, it is, there's enough research out there to provide to parents to get the support you might need to incorporate this in your online teaching right now. I would also love if anyone in the room has experience and has used it in their online teaching right now, for you to speak up at this point. Less of me and more of you would be a good thing.
David Marcus here. I'm with Peel. I'm sitting here in my little spaceship teaching a grade 4 class since September. I've just started taking my cell phone with Google Meets. Just taking my cell phone out for walks. I'm fortunate enough to live back onto a ravine, and we'll do about half an hour every couple of days, just doing the walks with me doing the walking. Today we were down by the creek and just became really fixated on a red-winged blackbird. And that just led to a whole stream of conversations and some YouTube videos about how red-winged blackbirds attack people and to protect their area, and the kids just loved it.
Thank you, David, for sharing. This is incredibly challenging times. So you're all my heroes for being out there doing this work. But I do think that if children have supervision, they can take some of these inquiry questions and employ them themselves as part of their learning.
Ideally, yes. And last year I was out regularly with the walking curriculum book in hand. It's just I'm trying as many ways as possible to engage the students, give them these activities to do, but it is a hit or a miss. And as the year has been dragging on, the energy level is going downhill. And so this is just another means of getting them, and it really brings a spark to the time we have together. So just that connectivity really seems to help.
Thank you, David. I believe that that's one of the real advantages right now for educators who are in schools and really want to be out of the school building and into the playground and schoolyard, is there's a real benefit emotionally and mental health for the educators themselves.
Mhm.
which is very important here when we need to do that last, 50, feels like 50K of our run into June this year. I appreciate you sharing that, David.
You are welcome.
Hi, everyone. I also think it's, so many procedures and policies and permission forms that make it difficult. I use the walking curriculum for at least 3 years now. My kids are enjoying doing it, but it's all these new rules about don't go across the street in the park without having the permission form. You cannot have a field or walking field trip, not even 20 minutes, if you don't have a ratio of 1 to 8 adults to joining you. So there are so many other boundaries that are limiting what you could do, because it's so much you could do just on the school playground or around the school.
Thank you, Monica. That's absolutely the truth. And I faced this in my own teaching when I was at that inner city school. There wasn't much of a playground or a schoolyard at the time. And the rules around getting the children off the school ground. But the walks are meant to happen daily. And some of those will definitely happen within the schoolyard and within the school ground. Now, the first and foremost of importance is the well-being and the safety of the children. Obviously, in every school context is different. Crossing that street in some areas may be no problem. Other areas may be really risky. So there's always the contextual issues to be taken into account. But typically, if you have a schoolyard with any kind of space for the children to explore, there's a lot to be learned out there, I believe.
Totally.
All right, Jillian, is it okay if we move on to the next question, or would you like some more time for discussion?
Oh no, let's go. Woohoo!
Great. Yeah, lots of great questions. So it'll be nice to answer some of these. So a couple of people actually in the chat are wondering if you can provide an example of a walk or something that you've mentioned in the book.
Well, it's funny, there's some favorites. I feel like calling on some of the people in the room today that they know I know them, and I know they do these walks all the time, but I think they'd be angry at me if I called on them. So there's some real favorites. There's one, for example, called the Unlovely and the Lovely Walk. So it seems pretty simple. You might have the children, learners, and when I say children, I mean even the teenagers. So you might have the learners, or even I take my students in post-secondary out, the lovely, unlovely walk. You're asking them to look for things they would consider to be lovely, and then the things they would consider to be unlovely. And then they have to keep track of those. But then you discuss, well, why are these things lovely and why are these things unlovely? And you have to switch roles and argue for the loveliness of the unlovely things and the unlovely nature of the lovely things, because typically we'll call the mud or the bug unlovely and the flower lovely. Anyway, it leads to an interesting conversation around perspective and subjectivity, and it can lead to some critical thinking and questions that can connect to other things. There's a walk called the line walk, very simple one. And if Kelsey Keller's in the room, she makes me laugh. She says her students ask to do it every single week. You'd think it's a line. You'd think that's kind of not much to do, but every week they find different natural and human-made lines. And then they talk about ways in which the words around language and line are used in other ways, being in alignment and misaligned. And then they notice how lines divide and exclude. And it tends to be these metaphorical connections of the walks that lead to a lot of discussion. I did see a question in there about the little ones, the littlest ones of all, the kindergartners. So there's the whole first set of 30 walks are really meant to be used quite immediately. And they may simply be colors, and it's all about observing. But what's a bit different about a color walk in this particular resource is that it's paired with that imagination piece. It's paired with something called a cognitive tool, which in the theory of imaginative education is how we then end up leaning into and remembering the knowledge. So it might be a story or an image or a pattern or a heroic quality. This is all well beyond this 1 hour webinar. If you want to do your master's, you come to SFU and I'll help you out, right, Megan Sandham? There you go. I called you out. So there's all of these different ways. So I saw a question about middle school. Absolutely. You can take a color walk and make that important or relevant for those middle schoolers, but they have a different shape of their imagination. It's what Kieran Egan, the person who's most written about imaginative education, he says we have more of a romantic take on the world, the great adventure. And so we're looking for heroic qualities and extremes and limits and bizarre things. You know, middle schoolers, they love the Guinness Book of World Records, that kind of stuff. So if you were doing a color walk with middle schoolers, you would use a different tool of imagination. So that's sort of how it works. There's so many different ways to engage imagination. If I was going to send all of you out to do a color walk, I might tap into a tool of philosophic imagination, which might have you consider the power of color to affect our mood and thinking. So there's all kinds of ways we can have students lean into the topic, which is maybe how I describe imagination. It's leaning in, emotionally connecting, and developing sort of a more meaningful connection with something. I apologize if I'm speaking really, really fast. I think I might be, but.
That was great. Thanks, Jillian. I guess building on that a little, Melissa Harrison has a question. What is your favorite way to evoke imagination?
That's really interesting. Like, as I wear a lot of hats. I have a parent, I'm a parent of 2 teens. And if you think my 2 teens are out absorbing nature all the time, no, come on. They're teenagers. They're like, I can't get them off TikTok half the time. But when I do, and we're outside, what is one of my favorite things to do? Well, it's the same way that I would consider shaping a lesson for my post-secondary students, is that I really need to pause, and this is a bit of educational blasphemy here. I need to figure out what is emotionally inviting for me as an educator. I know we've all been trained to say children's first, but unless we have an emotional connection, unless we are passionate about a topic, they know. So I would begin by thinking about, what is emotionally engaging about it? And for that, I really want to evoke my own sense of wonder. How is that leaf not just a leaf? Like, how is that a pretty extraordinary creation? How is that leaf like a great hideout for an ant? How is that leaf a profound example of gravity at work? How is that leaf? So I try to put a spin on the ordinary and make it seem extraordinary. That is a central way. One of the things we can think about when you want to talk about bringing imagination to the center of your practice is, I would encourage you to think of yourself as a storyteller. So it's not that you're making up fictions all the time, but what's the story on that leaf? Is it a great example of gravity at work and the tragic death of a poor something that ended up being under this leaf? What's the story on that leaf? How do we frame things so that our students suddenly see ordinary things as extraordinary? And so I guess that's a long way of saying that my favorite way to evoke imagination is to engage my own wonder first, and then create an opportunity for my students to take it in their own direction. I'm not defining how they end up feeling about it, but I really want them to lean in and feel or pause or think a little bit differently about that leaf.
Nice. That was awesome. All right, we have a question from Sally. How much do you think does storytelling, folklore, or variation of culture inspire imagination as a starting point on land-based pedagogy?
What a fantastic question, Sally. Part of me wants to say, I don't know. The other part of me wants to say, oh, so much. But I can, answering from a settler Western perspective, we know that at the heart of how imagination, and I'm talking about imagination through a Western perspective, because from some of the indigenous perspectives I've been reading about, imagination isn't a possession of the human, it's actually part of the land to begin with. So from my own perspective and what I've understand imagination to be, story is inseparable from imagination. Storytelling has been the way in which imagination has developed individually and culturally over time. And so thinking about and looking at the stories of the land and looking at land in terms of story, those are profoundly important ways. So you can not only shape what you're doing and shape what you're teaching in a way that brings out emotion, which is what a story is. Like, a story is not just a fiction. A story is when the person listening knows how to feel. So, par exemple, Paul and my French right there, maybe I've attempted to be a storyteller today. Maybe I've attempted to leave you feeling something about the possibility of an imaginative and eco practice. I've shown some examples. I've tried to use images and story so that you feel a little bit more like you're leaning into the idea that this might work for you. And if I've succeeded, if you feel something at the end of this talk, then it's been more like a story rather than a list or just a sort of emotionless knowledge. In addition to that kind of story, it really is profoundly important that we work with the Indigenous communities on whose land we live and understand their stories. And if we have the proper relationships, maybe we would have the opportunity to learn some of those stories. Not to share them or appropriate those stories, but we just don't know the richness of what the land means to other Indigenous peoples until we make those connections and until we collaborate. I hope that was sort of getting at your question.
Great, thanks, Jillian. Lots of comments about all your content. Everyone's loving it, and there are lots of fans you have in here too. Julie says, I love hearing teachers share their stories of how they do walks. It inspires and shows all the possibilities. And I have a question from Patty that says, what is your favorite story about the walking curriculum?
I think for me, it's a bit of an equalizer. It's a bit of an opportunity. It puts some kids feel very comfortable outdoors. Others feel very comfortable indoors. But when students are outdoors and they're hunkered down, trying to figure out what something is, and they're moving in groups more naturally, and students that don't do as well in the classroom, it feels to me like it just makes learning a little bit more accessible for everyone. And I love the idea too, that within what I'm hearing from the educators that are doing it, they're finding that there is a real benefit for self-regulation and students' social emotional learning. It wasn't that social emotional learning wasn't my goal, but I went into this work thinking, how do we learn French outdoors ecologically and imaginatively? But being outdoors and having the opportunity to move a little bit more freely and being inquiry driven, it is a sort of at the heart of how human beings can like to learn. Some of the students you face will maybe be less comfortable without structure, but this is part of the hardest part of the work, is that we have to undo what children understand school to be. And for the youngest students, they don't know yet. But when you're dealing with students in grade 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, do you think they will appreciate this outdoor learning activity as serious as the one inside? Not unless we do the difficult work of having them understand those outdoor learning experiences as just as important, if not more important, depending on what you have them do out there. So that's what I love to see, the stories about all of the students, some that just come alive when they're outdoors, and those that seem to the first time be really asking questions outdoors, and those small breaks in the sort of perceptions of what school is. I love hearing those stories.
Great, thank you. I have quite a few questions around how can the walking curriculum be incorporated for groups such as second language learners or homeschooling or large groups, special needs. This is kind of a bunch of different questions. So I'm wondering if you can kind of answer all that under an umbrella, or if you want to pick certain groups and talk about this, like the specialty in that.
I can't think of any group where the walking curriculum wouldn't be useful, because you have to identify which aspect is most appropriate for your students. You will know a good place to start. For large groups, it's a matter of having your expectations in place. I have a section of the walking curriculum. It talks about, do you think it's going to work if you just take that math 10 class outside. I got an email from someone in the US who said, "Dear Jillian, I did your walking curriculum with my math 10 students and it didn't work." Basically like, can I have a refund? And so well, what happened? And there was no preparation. There was no setting of the emotional scene. There was no laying out of expectations. There was no strong connection between what happens outside to the continued learning inside. So in whatever context you want to do this work, we need to take the time to have the relationships in place with students so that they're willing to do the work, and B, make sure that what you're asking the students to do is suitable for the students in front of you. And I can't give a blanket answer to that. I do know that there's a group that really is working for inclusion of all students, and they've asked me if there's ways to use technology to allow students to engage that are differently abled. And absolutely, I think walking curriculum is a bit of a misnomer, but if I called it the outdoor experiential curriculum, doesn't work as well. It's not about the walking. That isn't the focus of the curriculum. It's about changing the context, shifting the perspective, and putting kids right out there, even in a gravel playground to begin with. That's what matters. So in my mind, we don't have enough time to look at each of the contexts, but I have yet to learn of a group of students that it wouldn't work for. Homeschooling absolutely would. You would just have a group of students, you would go to a local park. Second language learning, we have some people now at SFU doing, I could call on Denny James. She's been doing all her work with walking curriculum in a French immersion context. Denny, I don't know if you're in the room today. Hello, hello. So all of this is developing, and I'm excited about some professional learning opportunities I want to have in the fall. I did a survey recently and we had a lot of respondents, and a lot of people want to do like specialized groups next year. Maybe we'll have a second language learning walking curriculum groups. Maybe we'll have a middle schoolers group, primaries. This is all going to happen. If you want to develop as a community, we can absolutely do that.
Well, Jillian, I'm so glad that we went to Plan B, because all of this emerging conversation is coming out. So
Plan B was
Plan
all
A. Yeah, should have been Plan A. So
overrated. So
I'm
I need
just
to
acknowledging. Oh, go ahead.
I need to share my screen again, don't I?
Yeah, that would be great. And I think there's some more questions, but we'll do a bit of a promo and then some prizes, and then we'll have some more time after to chat more with Jillian.
So this is really exciting. This is really close to my own heart. Many of you, if you're on Twitter, you will have heard about the 30-day walking curriculum challenge. It's just the commitment that you're going to take your students outdoors for 30 days every day for some kind of imagination or inquiry focused walk. Now on our event page, and I know somebody's going to put it into the chat, there's a lot of activities you can start with. There's a letter for parents, just print it off and hand it out. There's a bunch of prizes from the sponsors, many of whom Duncan's mentioned. This year, this is my big wish, is I really want to get 1,000 participants. And when we do, Imaginative is going to donate $1,000 to the Environmental Youth Alliance. We are at 420, and I'm hoping that if you haven't signed up already, every one of you can do that today. There's no harm in doing it. You probably are taking your students outdoors most days anyway. There's space there to share ideas with other walkers, all kinds of things. So I would really love it if you feel inspired to look into it and maybe sign up to join the Walking Curriculum Challenge this year. If you want to connect with me, I would love that. I'm at Perfinker on Twitter. I do tweet a lot. If you want to learn about who's doing the walking curriculum, then check out that hashtag walking curriculum on Twitter. It's a big one. And oops, I have to move. And my email there is, I'm always available if anybody would like to connect via email. The blog is a big one. There's a lot of resources, all of these tools for imagination. If you go to this blog and you could sign up, you would just get an email once a month with all our articles on it. There's a whole set of tips for imaginative educators. These are tools that educators can use to engage imagination, whether you don't go out at all. A lot of my work is around engaging imagination in all learning. So a lot of this applies to indoor and outdoor teaching. And so you can sign up, and if you don't like it, you can not stop signing up. these are some of the books I've written. The first one on the left is the one that nobody's bought except my mom. And then the one in the middle and on the right, these are both through the Outdoor Learning Store. I don't know if Duncan's mentioned, the great thing about the Outdoor Learning Store is that the proceeds, the profits get divvied up and given to nonprofits in British Columbia. So they go back into organizations that need it, which is really, really exciting. So you can get some of these, and there's also, not because you need to buy these things, there's also a lot of articles and a lot of blogs and a lot of podcasts that you could learn about these things without spending any additional funds. My final slide was to say that I'm going to be at every single one of these sessions. They're going to be fantastic. It's going to be Tuesdays are the best days. David Sobel, his personal hero, is coming next week, and I'm very excited to have been part of the series and to be here again next week. I hope others come as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Jillian. And it's a real pleasure to work with you, to collaborate in this space with you. So I think we'll draw a couple of prizes right now. And then, yeah, Jillian, are you open to staying around for some more questions? We still have 360 people on the line. Yeah. I
can, this is where truth and honesty comes into play. I can stay until I have to drive my kid to soccer. It's just truth. But I've definitely got some time right now, at least 20 minutes.
Awesome. Awesome. Farheen, did you want to do the Take Me Outside prize?
For sure. So Take Me Outside is giving away 2 weatherproof journals to 2 participants. And I'm going to randomly choose the names right now. So the first name is Margaret Broden, and I'll just write that in the chat, and we can follow up with you and get your email. So congratulations, you won a weatherproof journal from Take Me Outside, also sold at the Outdoor Learning Store. And the second winner is David Marcus. So congratulations, both of you. Take Me Outside also has our own store, and we have t-shirts on sale right now. So I'll just pop a quick link in the chat. Feel free to check it out. And we'll see you at the rest of the webinars. And we have lots of things to give away at those as well. I'll pass over to you, Duncan.
Thanks, Farheen. This wasn't planned at all, but I'm going to shift my screen. Check it out. I've got my beautiful Take Me Outside on right now. They are awesome and super comfy and beautiful. So that was an unplanned promo. And yeah, like Jillian said, the proceeds from the Outdoor Learning Store now go back not just to supporting nonprofits in BC, but actually from coast to coast to coast. So it's a really cool social enterprise. I have the privilege of drawing for $50 at the Outdoor Learning Store. And drum roll, Krista Cairns wins. So I will email you, Krista, with your $50 gift card. I'm also very pleased to share that as a token of our gratitude for Jillian joining us today, we are able to offer her a $500 gift card at the Outdoor Learning Store that you can keep or share or do what you want with.
What?
We had an incredible supporter come on board and offer that. And so we will chat. You and I will chat. We can see what you want to do with that, but you can share the love if you want.
I will share the love. I will share the love. That's amazing. Thank you, Duncan.
No problem. So I think, you know, I will, if you're leaving us now, I'll send an email out by tomorrow with the links and resources and all that good stuff with your certificate of attendance link too. So if you have to leave us, thanks for joining us. Really, yeah, glad to have you as part of the outdoor learning community in Canada and look forward to engaging with you. Hopefully you can join us next week. If you're going to stay on the line, we welcome you to join us for until soccer practice time, right, Jillian?
The truth. The reality. Now, I just noticed that my actual cousin is in the room. So hi, Tina. It's good to see you. We don't get to see each other anymore.
So I don't know, Farheen, if you had gathered up a question or any final kind of question there. And then I'll look at the chat for any other questions we've got.
I will check my notes, but to be honest, the questions and the comments were just flooding in. So
Is there any way we can save the chat as a text? I'd love to read through it tomorrow when I have some time. That'd be nice. Thank you.
yeah, so I can save it on my end. I believe that gets saved with the recording. So I'm sure one of us who saves it will get it too. Yeah, I have a couple questions that were here from before. So here's a question from AW, which was, I'm a post-secondary design professor. Could this be useful for creative thinking for adults? And there was a similar question about the best walking curriculum part to engage adults in the outdoors. So I guess, yeah, engaging adults.
I think so as well, because some of my courses that I teach are not necessarily ecologically focused, but I really want my adult learners to sort of see where they are creative and how the natural world can inspire that creativity. So I definitely use walking focused themes with my students in ways that connect to draw out themes that or topics that I'm teaching in the course. Curriculum pieces. I like the idea of, and I've actually written about it and it's on the blog. If you look at the Imagine Ed blog and you go under Imaginative Education category, there's a higher education category, and under that there's examples of walking curriculum for higher or post-secondary. For example, when I'm teaching about the difference between sort of a formalized story and the story way we narratize things, I have students look for examples that are a story versus a story form. It's really interesting how the outdoor sort of, once we get into it, how the ideas that emerge are very diverse based on the outdoor walking. So the short answer is yes. Much more can be done in that area, and that's why it's exciting that people are interested in doing the work and extending the research.
Thanks, Jillian. I'm going to pass it over to Duncan to carry on the question and answers. I have to head out. It was great being a part of this and great reading all the comments and chats and questions. So Duncan will take it from here, and I will save the chat to follow up with you later. Thank you. Bye.
Sure. Yeah, good colleague, friend of mine, and in the Columbia Basin region here asked Jillian, where can we find out about all the awesome Pro D you are offering in the future?
That's a good question. Will this pandemic ever end? Like, seriously? But anyway, so I do have a web page which has some upcoming talks, but I guess I have a few this week. There's the Columbia, there's the Kootenai presentation on Monday. Maybe I could stick in the site here my own web page link, if that's okay. And then I try to update that. But I'm open to doing more kind of these kinds of sessions, especially because it's the kind of the only way we can do it these days, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Thank you for it means a lot if you're inspired enough to learn a little bit more about these ideas. Thank you.
Well, and we look forward to having Jillian back on our show, virtually, potentially, in the not too distant future. There's a couple of questions about recording. This is being recorded, and we'll look forward to sharing the link tomorrow, along with a link that you'll get for a certificate of attendance, because we know some of you, especially the early years learners or educators in the crowd, will need that.
Does anybody feel like they might sign up for the walking curriculum challenge? Give me a nod, give me a yay, awesome. Well, I see Betty DeGroot in there. Betty and a colleague are already using the walking curriculum and are presenting. I'm excited to hear about that. Fantastic. I hope others have signed up. I'm really going to be curious about when the pandemic is over, and it will end, how many educators that went out for reasons of germs decide they want to stay out for some of their teaching. I'm really excited to think that this maybe led to a potential transition for some educators. That's exciting.
For sure. Yeah, I think it'll be sticky. I think this stuff is obviously really good. So we look forward to working with a much bigger group now and beyond. Krista Cairns, who is our award winner, $50 draw prize winner, says her imagination is rusty, but where can she go for examples of how people have engaged imagination for different groups, i.e. the color walk 10 ways.
So what I would suggest is you go to ImagineEd, which is the main website, educationthatinspires.ca, and you can look under the Imaginative Education focus for more about imaginative education. You can look under the tips for imaginative educators section for the cognitive tools, but under the walking curriculum link, there is sample walks and recent examples. And that's where some people who are willing to share and write about their work, some of those are posted there. If you happen to be a Twitter person, you can, or just get an account and just lurk and look at things, you can follow the walking curriculum hashtag and see from those people that are doing it, how they're doing it. There is a connection and a Google Doc set up to be used during the walking curriculum challenge. But as you all know, it's only going to be useful if people use it. And so people have to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable and put some of their ideas in there in order to share. I think a lot of people are just learning as they go. We did a survey and I asked, what's the best way that you've learned about the walking curriculum? 40% said the best way to do it is just to try it, do it and learn as you go, which was pretty interesting.
Awesome. Thanks, Jillian. Hey, somebody was wondering what the deadline is for signing up, and they were mentioning, I don't have the question in front of me, September. And so I wonder, is this something you're maybe going to be doing again?
Well, we did 2 walking curriculum challenges in 2019, and there's no reason, you probably don't need me to explain why it didn't happen in 2020. We did a spring and a fall event. So if there's a real interest, I think we would in fact maybe have another, maybe. So it's possible we would have a fall event as well if there's enough interest. And sign up right to the day before. We just kick it off on May 3rd and you're just outdoors doing something, rain or shine, and you're sharing about it with people in your school or on Twitter or with colleagues, whatever you want to do.
And I know we did have somebody mention, obviously in Ontario and other parts of the country where schools are not in person right now. Is there a way of them engaging if they're not in person, maybe getting their class out in their backyard?
I think so. I would encourage people that are online, if you're going to have your students do something outdoors under the supervision of whoever they're home with, then that is absolutely out 30 days. Just if they can be outdoors for all of their learning, that would be good for them, immensely good for them as well.
Perfect. And looking forward to when the snow flies again. Tanya.
Already?
Well, there's some winter people in the crowd.
Oh, hey, Tanya. Tanya Murray's in the house.
Yeah, Tanya's wondering about whether we could do a winter one. And hi, Tanya, by the way. Nice to see you here.
I got some feedback on what are some of the challenges, and overwhelmingly the challenges from the 82 participants who gave me feedback, first of all, they said time to do the walks, time to establish with students the routines for doing the walks, that kind of thing. And then the next thing was sort of like, it's Canada, weather, clothing. So, I mean, it is an issue. I'm on the West Coast, so anybody joining us from Manitoba might think I'm nuts to think that we would do this in January, but Tanya Murray would say no, she's out there in all weather.
Well, and being the part of the world we are in, we have multiple people saying it is snowing today in their parts of the world. So winter is, sometimes 12 months a year in some places. Okay, how are you doing for time there, Jillian? I mean, we could have hours of questions here, but I want to.
I should definitely, well, this is the very glamorous life. It's because the battery died in the car that I'm the one driving to soccer. It's all just very glamorous. So I have 5 more minutes and then I apologize. I thought we were 4 to 5. It's exciting that there's interest to stay longer. That's great.
Yeah, no, we've still got over 100 people on the line here. So a couple other questions that Farheen had noted. One was from Jasmine saying, how do we build a positive relationship when people are also talking about trampling on natural spaces and causing ecological impact to the land? So how do we balance that?
I think it is incredibly important. That's part of our preparation. We're not out there to pick the flowers and to destroy what we're seeing. It's really a practice of observing and showing gratitude for what we observe out there. It is really important that we address those kinds of behaviors early on, and it is not unusual to see those kinds of behaviors. It is all part of the learning process. Reconfiguring, reimagining our relationship with the natural world. It takes time, patience, and an open heart, definitely.
And one last one. Am I allowed to slip in one more? Here we
Of
go.
course.
Final question of the night is from Lindsay. And now I don't know what province or territory Lindsay is from, so this might be a challenging question, but sometimes Lindsay has trouble connecting the walking curriculum and the curriculum. Wondering if you could provide some suggestions but that might be a tricky one.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure where you're from, Lindsay. If it's BC, then it's really a competency curriculum. So we're looking at creative and critical competencies and other competencies. So sometimes those connections are through metaphor and through students demonstrating the competency based on a question you've asked them to explore outdoors. Some people ask me, give me an example for pre-calculus 12. And I say, I can't give you an example for pre-calculus 12 because I don't know how to do pre-calculus 12. So this is why having professional learning communities in different subject areas would be so fantastic. I have somebody who's already expressed interest in being sort of a math lead for secondary, and somebody who could be a different lead, because we need to work together. We need to work as a community, because no one person has the expertise to offer all of those connections. And I can't do the work of connecting it to a curriculum if I don't know what that curriculum is. And as I mentioned, social studies and a French teacher originally. So I think the more that we collaborate and the more we use Zoom means we don't need to worry about time zones and travel to work together. So that's exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you yet again, Jillian. And this won't be the last time. And Jillian's actually featured in our Earthy Chats podcast as the first podcast. So
that was fun.
I've listened to it 3 times. Maybe.
Oh, you poor thing.
Well, my wife needed to listen to it too, and then my kids needed. So anyway, we've all listened to it now, and it's fantastic. So encourage you to check that out. We'll send that out in the follow-up link. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Obviously, this is a high interest area, and we'll continue to share resources. We hope to see you all next week with David Sobel.
Yes, I'll see everybody next week, and I'll take a back seat next week. Thank you for coming.